There was once a man who believed that transparency was a virtue. He told his colleagues his dreams, his friends his fears, his family his plans. He thought that sharing was connection, that vulnerability was strength, that an open book was a respected book. He was wrong. His colleagues used his dreams to gauge his ambition and block his rise. His friends used his fears to manipulate his emotions. His family used his plans to voice their doubts, and his plans died under the weight of their opinions. He was not loved for his openness. He was mapped, and a mapped territory is a conquered territory. The man had told everyone about his new business idea before he had even tested it. They offered opinions, criticisms, suggestions. By the time he was ready to act, the idea no longer felt like his own. He learned to keep his plans in the vault of his mind until they were already in motion. The unshared plan is the plan that cannot be sabotaged by premature exposure, and the man who speaks only of what is already done is the man who is never talked out of his own future.
He had always worn his heart on his sleeve. People knew when he was angry, when he was hurt, when he was hoping. They used this knowledge to time their attacks, striking when he was weak, flattering when he was hopeful, pushing when he was tired. He learned to make his face a wall. He felt his emotions, but he did not broadcast them. The unreadable emotion is the emotion that cannot be anticipated, and the man who controls his expression controls the timing of every engagement.
He had confessed his insecurities to those he trusted, believing that honesty would deepen bonds. Instead, those insecurities became handles that others used to steer him, to guilt him, to control him. He learned that weakness is not a gift to be shared. It is a vulnerability to be guarded. The unspoken weakness is the weakness that cannot be exploited. And the man who keeps his fears to himself is the man who cannot be frightened by those who would weaponize them. He had documented everything: meals, travels, thoughts, relationships. His life was an open album, and the world was flipping through it. He realized that every post was a piece of himself given away for free. He stopped posting. He stopped sharing his location, his meals, his opinions. He became invisible. And in his invisibility, he discovered peace. The unposted life is the life that cannot be judged, envied, or tracked. And the man who lives without an audience is the man who performs for no one. He used to explain himself fully, leaving no room for ambiguity, believing that clarity was kindness. He learned that clarity is also vulnerability. When you finish your sentence, you have given everything. When you leave a sentence unfinished, you leave others guessing. And a guessing opponent is a hesitant opponent. He began to speak in fragments, to trail off, to let silences do the work of explanation. The unfinished sentence is the sentence that cannot be used against you because it was never completed. And the man who speaks less than he knows is the man who knows more than he speaks. People asked him about his plans, his feelings, his past. He used to answer, believing that answering was polite. He learned that questions are often not requests for information. They are probes for weakness. He stopped answering. He deflected, changed the subject, or simply remained silent. The questioners grew frustrated, then tired, then stopped asking. The unasked question is the question that cannot be answered because it is never entertained. And the man who does not answer probes is the man who cannot be mapped. He did not become a hermit overnight. He withdrew gradually, testing which shares cost him and which gave him value. He learned that some sharing is necessary for collaboration, for intimacy, for trust. But most sharing is excess. He pruned his words, his posts, his confessions. He kept his inner world for himself, and he discovered that the less he shared, the more he had to share when sharing mattered. The unfinished withdrawal is the withdrawal that never ends, because the balance between sharing and silence is always shifting. And the man who continually recalibrates is the man who never overshares. He used to announce his goals, seeking accountability and encouragement. He learned that announcing a goal gives the brain a premature reward, reducing the motivation to achieve it. He stopped announcing. He worked in silence, and when the goal was reached, he revealed only the result. His achievements seemed to appear from nowhere, which made them seem effortless, and effortlessness is a form of power. The unrecorded achievement is the achievement that cannot be jinxed, and the man who works in silence is the man whose successes surprise everyone but himself. The man who stopped sharing did not become a ghost. He still spoke, still connected, still loved, but he spoke less, connected more selectively, loved without performing. His friends noticed that when he spoke, his words carried weight. His colleagues noticed that when he shared a plan, it was already too late to oppose it. His family noticed that when he expressed a feeling, it was already processed, already integrated, already safe from their interference. He had learned that sharing is not a virtue, it is a transaction. And he had stopped transacting with those who could not pay the price of discretion. He used to thank people profusely, believing that gratitude was a social obligation. He learned that excessive gratitude devalues the original favor. He began to thank sparingly, meaningfully, and in private. His thanks became memorable because they were rare. The unspoken gratitude is the gratitude that is felt more than heard. And the man who withholds thanks until it is earned is the man whose thanks are treasured. He used to feel a compulsion to share interesting news, funny stories, personal updates. He realized that this compulsion was not generosity. It was a need for validation. He sat with the urge, let it pass, and discovered that the story did not need to be told. He kept it for himself, and the story became his private treasure. The unfelt urgency to share is the urgency that can be observed without being obeyed. And the man who learns to enjoy his own secrets is the man who is never starved for attention. He realized that he would never be finished learning what to share and what to withhold. New relationships, new contexts, new stakes would always emerge. He accepted this. He did not seek a permanent rule for sharing. He sought a practice of discretion. Each day, he asked, "Does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? Does this need to be said now?" If the answer to any was no, he kept silent. The unfinished secrecy is the secrecy that must be practiced daily. And the man who asks these questions before speaking is the man who never regrets what he said. He used to air grievances immediately, believing that confrontation was honest. He learned that immediate conflict is often performance, a show of anger for an audience. He began to let conflicts cool. He waited days, sometimes weeks, before addressing them. When he finally spoke, his words were measured, his grievances were focused, and his resolution was final. The unshared conflict is the conflict that is not performed. And the man who delays confrontation is the man who confronts only when it is necessary. The man in our story learned the hard way that sharing is not a virtue, it is a risk. He learned that every piece of information you give away is a piece of your power that you will never get back. He learned that silence is not emptiness, it is a fortress. He learned to speak only when speaking served him, to share only when sharing strengthened him, to withhold always and automatically unless he had a compelling reason to release. You can learn this too. Start today. Notice the next time you feel the urge to share something that does not need to be shared. Pause. Ask yourself, what do I gain? What do I lose? If you cannot answer with certainty, keep your silence. Subscribe to The Dark Scholar. This channel is your training ground for strategic silence. Hit subscribe now and learn the art of keeping your own counsel. Today, take one piece of information you were about to share, a plan, a feeling, an opinion, and keep it to yourself. Do not post it, do not text it, do not say it. Just hold it. Comment below, I kept one secret today. Let us build a community of people who speak only when it serves. Today, catch yourself before you share something that does not need to be shared. A plan, an opinion, a feeling. Keep it inside. Notice how it feels to hold it. Comment below, I kept another secret today. Let us build a community of people who speak only when it serves. The man who had learned to stop sharing found that his silence created a new problem. People began to fill the void with their own stories. They talked more, revealed more, confessed more. He listened, and in listening, he learned. He discovered that the less he spoke, the more others revealed. His silence became a net, catching the words that others let slip. He did not manipulate, he simply observed. And in observing, he gathered knowledge that no one had intended to give him. People confessed to him secrets, fears, regrets. They expected him to respond with his own vulnerability, to trade confession for confession. He did not. He received their words without reciprocity. They left feeling exposed, while he remained armored. The unreturned confession is the confession that gives power to the listener and takes it from the speaker. And the man who listens without sharing becomes the keeper of keys that others have handed him freely. He had once given away his time, his expertise, his contacts, freely. He learned that resources shared without discernment are resources wasted. He began to ask, what am I getting in return? Not transactionally, but strategically. He stopped giving his time to those who offered nothing in return. His time became scarce, and scarcity created value. The unshared resource is the resource that cannot be taken for granted, and the man who withholds what is valuable becomes valuable himself. He had once filled silences with his own thoughts, his own opinions, his own stories. Now he let silences breathe. He watched faces in the quiet, read body language, noted who grew uncomfortable, who shifted, who reached for their phone. The silence was not empty. It was full of data. The unspoken observation is the observation that requires no words. And the man who learns to watch in silence sees what others hide behind their chatter. In negotiations, he used to state his position clearly, believing that transparency built trust. He learned that transparency in negotiation is surrender. He began to let his position be ambiguous, to leave his opponents guessing. They overestimated, underestimated, prepared for possibilities he never intended. By the time they understood his true position, it was too late. The unreadable position is the position that cannot be countered. And the man who keeps his cards face down is the man who never reveals his hand until the game is won.
He learned to reveal information in fragments, never the whole picture. He gave enough to satisfy curiosity, not enough to satisfy strategy. Those who sought to understand him found only pieces, and pieces without context are useless. The unfinished revelation is the revelation that keeps the listener hungry and the speaker in control. And the man who reveals in fragments is the man who can never be fully known.
He had once given feedback freely to colleagues, to friends, to family. He learned that most feedback is unwelcome, and even welcome feedback often breeds resentment. He stopped giving feedback unless it was requested. When it was requested, he gave it sparingly, carefully, and only if he was certain it would be used. The unspoken feedback is the feedback that cannot be argued with because it was never delivered. And the man who keeps his criticisms to himself is the man who never makes unnecessary enemies.
He had once introduced his contacts freely, believing that connection was generosity. He learned that his network was his power, and sharing it carelessly diluted that power. He became selective. He introduced only when the introduction served him, not just the parties involved. His network became a resource that others sought, but could not access without his permission. The unreadable network is the network that cannot be exploited, and the man who guards his connections guards his influence.
He had once carried the emotional burdens of others, listening to their complaints, solving their problems, absorbing their stress. He learned that carrying another's burden does not lighten it only doubles it. He stopped absorbing. He listened, acknowledged, but did not take on. Their burdens remained theirs. The unshared burden is the burden that cannot be transferred. And the man who refuses to carry what is not his is the man who has energy for his own struggles. He had once praised others openly, believing that recognition motivated. He learned that public praise creates expectations and envy. He began to praise in private, quietly, without witnesses. His appreciation was felt, but not advertised. Those who received it felt truly valued. Those who did not were not resentful because they did not know it existed. The unspoken appreciation is the appreciation that cannot be weaponized by comparison. And the man who praises in silence is the man whose praise is never performative.
The man who had learned to stop sharing did not become a ghost. He still spoke, still connected, still loved, but his words had weight. His presence had gravity. His silence had meaning. People no longer asked him casual questions. They asked him important ones. They no longer expected him to fill every pause. They learned to value the pauses. He had not withdrawn from the world. He had become selective about which parts of the world he engaged with. And in that selectivity, he found not isolation, but sovereignty.
He realized that he would never be finished learning what to share and what to withhold. New relationships, new contexts, new stakes would always emerge. He accepted this. He did not seek a permanent rule for sharing. He sought a practice of discretion,
Each day, he asked, "Does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? Does this need to be said now?" If the answer to any was no, he kept silent. The unfinished secrecy is the secrecy that must be practiced daily. And the man who asks these questions before speaking is the man who never regrets what he said.
He had once explained his boundaries in detail, believing that clarity would prevent violations. He learned that explaining boundaries invites negotiation. Those who heard his boundaries would test them, probe them, seek exceptions. He stopped explaining. He enforced boundaries silently. When someone crossed a line, he simply withdrew. No warning, no explanation, no debate. The boundary was felt, not discussed. The unspoken boundary is the boundary that cannot be argued with because it is not offered for discussion. And the man who enforces without explaining is the man whose limits are never tested twice.
He had once voiced his doubts openly, seeking reassurance or alternative perspectives. He learned that doubt voiced is doubt amplified. Others would echo it, magnify it, use it against him. He began to keep his doubts to himself. He resolved them internally, sought answers privately, and presented only certainty. The unshared doubt is the doubt that cannot be weaponized. And the man who keeps his uncertainty private is the man whose confidence appears unshakable.
He did not withdraw from the world entirely. He withdrew from the parts that drained him: the gossip, the performative socializing, the oversharing. He remained engaged where engagement mattered. His withdrawal was surgical, not absolute. The unfinished withdrawal is the withdrawal that can be adjusted as circumstances change. And the man who knows when to engage and when to disappear is the man who is never trapped by his own habits.
The man in our story learned that silence is not absence. It is presence held in reserve. He learned that every word spoken is a door opened, and every door opened is an invitation. He learned to keep his doors closed, to speak only when speaking built something or defended something. He learned that the greatest power is not in what you say, it is in what you choose not to say. Now go. Practice silence. Guard your plans. Keep your fears. Watch your words cross the threshold of your lips and ask each one, do you belong outside? If not, keep them home.
He had once tried to prove his worth through sharing. His achievements, his knowledge, his connections. He learned that value is not proven by display. It is inferred from scarcity. He stopped advertising his worth. He let his results speak. And his results spoke rarely but loudly. People began to wonder, to speculate, to seek his approval. The unreadable value is the value that cannot be assessed because it is never fully displayed. And the man who does not advertise his worth is the man whose worth is always underestimated. And underestimation is a weapon.
Today, catch yourself before you share something that does not need to be shared. A plan, an opinion, a feeling. Keep it inside. Notice how it feels to hold it. Comment below, I kept another secret today. Let us build a community of people who speak only when it serves.
The man who had mastered the art of strategic secrecy no longer felt the urge to share his plans, his pains, or his pleasures. His life was quieter,
his mind clearer, his power more concentrated. Yet a new temptation arose. He had become so adept at silence that he began to take pleasure in watching others squirm in his presence. Their discomfort at his unreadable face, their desperate attempts to fill the void with their own words. He enjoyed their exposure. He realized that this was a trap. The pleasure of watching others reveal themselves while he remained hidden was itself a form of sharing his superiority, his contempt, his satisfaction. He had not stopped sharing. He had merely changed what he shared. He stopped enjoying their discomfort. He let them be. He had nothing to prove, even to himself.
He had acquired knowledge that others did not have. Secrets, insights, understandings. He was tempted to hint at what he knew, to enjoy the power of knowing more. He realized that hinting is sharing. He stopped hinting. He kept his knowledge entirely to himself, using it only when action was required, never for display. The unspoken knowledge is the knowledge that cannot be extracted because it is never advertised. And the man who does not reveal what he knows is the man who can never be forced to reveal it.
He had learned to keep his plans secret, but he had not learned to keep his victory secret. He would let others know, subtly, that he had won, that he had known, that he had been in control. He realized that this was sharing his ego, and his ego was not a secret worth keeping. It was a weakness worth hiding. He stopped signaling his superiority. He let victory be its own reward. The unshared superiority is the superiority that cannot be resented because it is never displayed. And the man who does not need others to know he has won is the man who wins without enemies. People thanked him for his silence. They said he was a good listener, a safe confidant, a trustworthy friend. He realized that their gratitude was based on his refusal to share. He had become valuable because he gave nothing away. He did not bask in their gratitude. He simply noted it. The unfelt gratitude for sharing is the gratitude that arises from what you withhold, not what you give. And the man who understands this is the man who knows that silence is a gift. He had changed enormously, from a frantic sharer to a silent strategist. He was tempted to tell people about his journey, to explain how he had evolved, to teach others his methods. He realized that teaching is sharing, and sharing the method dilutes the advantage. He kept his transformation private. He let others wonder. The unshared transformation is the transformation that cannot be copied because its blueprint is hidden. And the man who does not teach his enemies is the man who remains ahead. He realized that he would never be finished learning what to share and what to withhold. New relationships, new contexts, new stakes would always emerge. He accepted this. He did not seek a permanent rule for sharing. He sought a practice of discretion. Each day, he asked, does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? Does this need to be said now? If the answer to any was no, he kept silent. The unfinished secrecy is the secrecy that must be practiced daily. And the man who asks these questions before speaking is the man who never regrets what he said.
He had accumulated a wealth of information about others, their secrets, their fears, their desires. This wealth was power. He never spent it. He never traded it. He never even looked at it directly. He simply held it.
He had built an archive of silence within himself, a vast library of unspoken words, unshared plans, unexpressed feelings. He visited this archive sometimes, not to share its contents, but simply to marvel at its existence. He realized that the archive was not a burden, it was a treasure. The unfinished archive is the archive that grows with every withheld word, and the man who adds to it daily is the man who never runs out of power. He saw others making mistakes, sharing too much, trusting too freely, exposing their vulnerabilities. He was tempted to warn them, to share his hard-won wisdom. He realized that unsolicited warnings are sharing, and sharing creates obligation. He did not warn. He watched. Some learned on their own. Others did not. The unspoken warning is the warning that cannot be resented because it was never given. And the man who lets others learn from their own mistakes is the man who is never blamed for their failures.
The man who had learned to stop sharing did not become a monster. He did not become cold or cruel. He became selective, ferociously selective. He shared his love with his family, his plans with his trusted partners, his fears with no one. He learned that the greatest gift you can give someone is not your openness. It is your presence, your attention, your choice to be with them. And presence requires no words. He had discovered that the deepest connection is not in what is said, but in what is silently held in common. He had once worried about how he would be remembered. Would people speak of his generosity, his wisdom, his contributions? He realized that legacy is sharing after death, and he would not be there to experience it. He stopped caring about his legacy. He focused on living well now, on keeping his secrets now, on being powerful now. The unshared legacy is the legacy that cannot be shaped by the dead. And the man who stops trying to control how he will be remembered is the man who is free to live without performance. He looked back at the years since he had stopped sharing. He had gone from a man who gave everything away to a man who gave nothing without calculation. He was not finished. He knew that new temptations would arise, new relationships that would pull at his secrets, new contexts that would test his silence. He accepted this. The unfinished journey is the journey that never ends, and the man who walks it without expecting to arrive is the man who never stops growing.
The man in our story is not a monk or a spy. He is simply someone who learned that sharing is not a virtue. It is a risk. He learned that every piece of information you give away is a piece of your power that you will never get back. He learned that silence is not emptiness. It is a fortress. He learned to speak only when speaking served him, to share only when sharing strengthened him, to withhold always and automatically, unless he had a compelling reason to release. Now you have the blueprint. Start today. Notice the next time you feel the urge to share something that does not need to be shared. Pause. Ask yourself, what do I gain? What do I lose? If you cannot answer with certainty, keep your silence. Build your archive. Guard your fortress. Be the prince.
Subscribe to The Dark Scholar. This channel is your weekly training in strategic silence. Hit subscribe now and learn to keep your own counsel. Today, catch yourself before you share something. A plan, a feeling, an opinion. Keep it inside. Then, at the end of the day, Write down 3 things you did not say that you would have said a year ago. Comment below, I kept 3 secrets today. Let us build a community of people who speak only when it serves. The fortress has no gates. No one enters, no one leaves. You are the fortress. Stop sharing. Be the prince.